Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel a good number of times before. These guys are one of the most recognisable Swedish craft breweries. They're one of the most featured breweries here on the channel and they're very well known for their New England Hazy IPAs. The beer that we're going to have a look at today is one of their very new releases and it's also a kind of reimagined version of one of their classics actually. So I'm very, very curious to see how this one turns out. Hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So let's see how we go. So for this review, we will head up towards Gothenburg once again, Göteborg as you would say in Swedish, the Swedish craft beer capital up there on the west coast, and we're going to have a look at yet another beer from Stigbergets Bryggeri. So this particular beer is the Amazing Haze Non Plus Ultra, which is basically a double dry hopped extra everything IPA as they're calling it, but this one comes in at 7.5% ABV and it's a New England Hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So yeah, this beer was released as part of the Lokal och Småskalig assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for July of 2021. And this is the first one that I'm reviewing out of my order box that I had. I did manage to get one from Brukeset Fin and another one from Elm 11 in Malmö itself, but this was the first one to come out of the order that I did. But yeah, very, very curious to see how it turns out. Amazing Haze, of course, is one of the kind of cult classic Swedish craft beers. So we've had a couple of different versions of it. We've had a triple dry hop version. I think we've had a double Amazing Haze as well, if I remember rightly. And I think we had a session version of it as well, if I remember too. So yeah, this is, I've had a couple of different versions of Amazing Haze. So hopefully this is another good one, like I said, and hopefully it makes for an interesting review. Let's crack on with this one then. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Stigbergets Bryggeri before, and I will no doubt add more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Stigbergets Bryggeri then, on to my brewery notes. So Stigbergets Bryggeri, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Gothenburg, Göteborg, up there on the Swedish west coast. And the company was founded by Nils Hultkrantz and Richard Simonsson. And these guys own two bars that share the one kitchen. This is Bar Kino and Hagebjörn's Cafe. And you'll find them on Linegatan in the city. They opened back in 2009. And this building is actually an independent cinema, which I didn't realise until I went to visit it. And if you want to have a little look and see what it looks like, you can check out my video that I did. My little out and about video that I did, which was filmed back in about October of 2019. It was a really cool little place to go and visit. The next time I go there though, I want to spend a bit more time in the Hagebjörn's Cafe and maybe go and see a film, so that would be pretty cool. But it's kind of the unofficial tap room of both OO Brewing and Stigbergets in Gothenburg. But originally the idea that Niels and Richard had was that they wanted to brew a few beers that they could sell in the bars. This led to them kegging the beers and then selling them to other pubs before they eventually started bottling them beginning in November of 2014. But the original beers that they did were mainly English and German styles, but more recently, of course, they made their name when they started brewing the more hoppy American styles of beer. The original head brewer was Ole Anderson, who is one of the co-owners of OO Brewing. He stayed with them until April of 2017. During his tenure, they developed the GBG Beer Week beer of 2016. Which is now known as the new and improved GBG Beer Week beer, one of their regulars of course, and he also developed the original Amazing Haze, and he also released the Narangi under his own OO company as well. He was replaced for a short period of time by Barnaby Struve, who was one of the vice presidents at Three Floyds over in Munster in Indiana. in the States, and now they have a new brewing team, which we'll come to in a minute. But around the time that Ole Anderson left, they moved to a new brewery at Partihalarna, and they were brewing 5,000 litre batches at a time there, and they also began working on some sour beers there as well. But they started selling their beers in 440 millilitre cans like this one, which allowed them to export a lot more. If you go and look at my very early Stigbergets reviews that I did, you'll see the old bottles that they used to have, which were pretty cool. But these days, Stigbergets have a brew team of Ollie Banks, who used to work for Beavertown in London, and also Lucas Monraid, who used to work for All In Brewing, one of the numerous gypsy breweries operating in the Gothenburg area. But as of summer 2020, they've moved to a new brewery in Ringen, and they're considering brewing some lambic beer there, from what I understand. But there's a really interesting concept surrounding this brewery, from what I've read, and they want this to be like an experience brewery. They're saying that they've got the possibility for swimming facilities there, and yeah, we'll just need to see how that develops once this whole COVID-19 thing kind of buggers off, if you like. But they opened up a bar in Stockholm earlier in 2020, and they've also opened up their own folköl shop in Gothenburg as well. And for those of you watching outside of Sweden, folköl is anything that is 3.5% and below. That can be sold in the supermarkets or in private businesses and things like that. So you can brew, quite a few breweries will brew a couple of beers that are 3.5% for sale in the supermarkets, and you get special versions of Pilsner Urquell and things like that through the supermarkets as well. But yeah, it's quite cool that they've got their own folköl shop in Gothenburg as well. I do hope that they liberalise the laws here in Sweden, that the breweries can sell direct to the customers as well, as they have in Finland. That would be a nice change, I think, here. But hopefully it wouldn't make getting some of the other beers too difficult for people like me who are reviewing them. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, as of June 2021, these guys, or July 2021 I should say, it's July 2021 now, these guys have produced around 130 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and that number is ever increasing. I've reviewed something like 70, maybe even more beers from these guys over the years. I've reviewed a hell of a lot of stuff from them actually, which is always strange to think about. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Stigbergets Bryggeri for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, these guys mainly known for their New England hazy IPAs of course, but you will get some really nice examples of other styles as well. I've had a really good Pilsner from them. In recent times they've been releasing a few lagers under the name Ringubräu, and they do some really nice imperial stouts as well actually. I had a very good barley wine from them once upon a time as well, and I know that next month they are going to release a Scotch ale, which I think could be really interesting. But yeah, that is it for your history section. Let's have a little look at the artwork of the beer then before we open it up. So as you can see, it's quite simple and tasteful, as you often get from Stigbergets. So yeah, it's kind of, I think this is meant to be, the kind of gold thing is meant to be a little bit of a tribute to the original can. Well, not the original can, the can that they have the Amazing Haze in currently. It's in that sort of goldy coloured can, as you'll see in Systembolaget. But this is a 440 milliliter can, of course. I paid, I think, 50 Swedish kronor for this one, which translates to about €5, £4.50, maybe about $5.75, $6 American, just so those of you watching across the world have a little bit of a price reference there. Gold top can on this one, and as I said, 7.5% New England Hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA, double dry hopped, a little bit extra of everything in it apparently. So yeah, just basically a slightly stronger version of the original Amazing Haze. If I remember correctly, Amazing Haze is an all mosaic hopped beer, but don't quote me on that, I'm not 100% sure, but I know there's definitely mosaic in it. So yeah, let's get this guy out then and we'll go on with the tasting. Very, very curious to see what this one has in store for us. Yeah, let's go for it then. There we are. You can look at the thickness of that when you pour it out as well. That looks lovely. So I think for the moment that will do while we have a little look at the colour and the aroma and things, and I'll just check that it's lined up. So as you can see, and as you would expect, this beer has poured a lovely, what colour would we describe this? It's a very murky yellow colour, this one. I think on the viewfinder on the camera it actually looks very, very bright to you guys, but to me on the naked eye it's a very kind of murky yellow, this one. You can see that the beer poured with about a half finger of a frothy white head, I would say. It's actually a little bit more bumpy compared to some of the other heads that we've had from Stigbergets in the past. So the bubbles in the head in this one are a lot bigger, but it's got a nice foamy ring just around the edge of the glass. There's a nice little bit of a kind of foamy island in the centre there now as well, but that head will fade away pretty quickly. But yeah, the colour of this one is very akin to like a sort of mango and, you know, a bit of a, like a mango and pineapple or mango and peach juice or something like that. I always like comparing the New England IPAs to different fruit juices because that's just what their appearance reminds me of. So remember, the colour of your beer is dependent on 1, the type of malts that you use. This determines the magnitude of the colour. 2, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. A New England IPA like this will undergo a boil of about 60 to 90 minutes. Any adjuncts or barrel aging will play a role as well, but quite often those factors are not at play when it comes to New England hazy IPAs. The level of haze in this one as well for a 7.5%er is pretty damn impressive. This is one of the soupier and gloopier ones I've seen from Stigbergets, and you can see on the pour that this thing was pretty bloody thick actually. So yeah, remember the level of haze is dependent on the oat and the wheat content. The yeast will also play a role as well, and that just varies from brewery to brewery and recipe to recipe, to be quite honest with you. There's no real rule about that, of course. But yeah, in terms of a New England IPA, this one certainly looks the part. 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass. The glass is sweating incidentally because of the lovely summer heat that we're getting here in Sweden. Even though I keep my fridge only at about 8 degrees or something, the glass is sweating away to buggery. But yeah, it looks great. 1 or 2 big bubbles on the side of the glass, as I say, and a few little ones going up towards the surface there. But in terms of a New England IPA, nothing surprising about the appearance of this one. Let's take a closer look at the aroma then and just see how we go with this beer. Let's do it. Yeah, that smells very, very nice. Now, I've had a couple of when I tried the triple dry hop version, the double dry hop version, whatever it was, the comment I made about this beer was that it smells very old school. And one thing I've found with these New England IPAs is that the ones that we had back in the day, such as the New Sweden from Opigårds, Narangi, GBG Beer Week and Amazing Haze, was they were always, you know, quite light and bready. They had a little bit of a wheaty bite to them as well. But these days I think the New England IPA has evolved to be a lot thicker, a lot creamier, and, you know, sometimes a lot sweeter. And again, this, you know, again, that's a kind of general statement. It varies from brewery to brewery. I think there's 6 directions you can take these beers in. They can be more yeasty and farmhousey, more rye leaning and grainy, more wheaty and bitey, oaty and creamy, barley malt leaning and bready, or they could be more brown sugary. And the flavours, the style's got a little bit more complex as it's developed, of course, but these old school ones come across as, you know, quite light and bready, but also a bit of wheaty bitiness and just a little bit of oatiness. And you can smell that right away in this beer. You can sort of smell, it's strange to say that a New England IPA is old school, but I mean, if I go back and think about it, these beers were released, you know, 2015, 2016. So it's about 6 years now, actually. That's not long after I first arrived in Sweden, of course. But yeah, it's crazy to think. But you can smell that right away in this one with the malt base. You get a lot more kind of barley malt out of this one, and then the wheat and the oats are just kind of sitting on top of it, if you like. It's almost like they are complementing the barley malt base rather than, you know, driving it, as is the case in a lot of these New England IPAs now. But it's quite nice to just have something like this and get a slightly different vibe from it. This is why I like reviewing beers. You can get little nuances from different brewers and breweries and everything like this. But yeah, this one still has that kind of old school, softer bready note and wheaty bitiness and oatiness that you would expect of the original Amazing Haze. And that's the other thing you have to say about Stigbergets. These guys have gotten pretty big, but they've still maintained the quality of their beers. They had a little, you know, they always have a little bit of a lull if they move premises or whatever, but then they bring it back within the next couple of months. That's kind of something that that we've seen from Stigbergets when they've moved on both occasions. But yeah, they're at the moment they're in a very strong position and putting out a lot of very, very good IPAs, in my opinion. And you know, you can smell the quality of this one straight away. So yeah, let's just break this down for you a little bit then. So as I've kind of told you, you can smell the backbone of this beer is that soft, fresh, white bready sort of thing. It does almost smell a little bit floury, like it's come straight out the bakery or whatever. So you do get a bit of that. There is a wee touch of a bread crust in this one, of course, and you can smell the wheat. The wheat's got a bit of bitiness at the back of the nose, but you can smell that in the middle of the nose it's kind of smoothing things out, and you do get a little bit of a creaminess. It's almost like a slightly powdered oaty type quality that you can smell in the middle of the nose with this one. And yeah, you will find as these beers kind of get older, if you let them sit in the can a bit too long, the oats kind of thicken up and you almost get this sort of powdery type note out of them. So I do wonder how long this beer's kind of been sitting a little bit, because I ordered it on the 1st, and for some reason Systembolaget are taking quite a bit of time to deliver these things now. I think it was about the 9th or so, the 9th or 10th before it arrived in the Lund Systembolaget after I ordered it, which is strange because usually it arrives on like the 4th or 5th or something. But yeah, it's been the last 2 months it's like that. So yeah, I don't know how long these beers sit in the warehouse before they are released, of course. That's the other thing. It's one of the criticisms of Systembolaget is how long they let beer sit. But yeah, you can smell in this one the oats are just starting to kind of cream up a little bit and give you that sort of slightly powdery thing that they have. But yeah, on the malt base as well, or in the malt base, I think there's a wee bit of like golden promise in this, because you can just smell a little bit of that kind of Werther's Original butter candy type note out of this one. There's a wee bit of that to the beer, and perhaps just a little bit of a kind of bready, of a little bit of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing. But yeah, white bready base, the barley malt thing there all the way, a little bit of a kind of bread crusty element, some white bready notes on top of that, a little bit of wheaty bitiness, of course, and then you've got the oaty creaminess and a wee touch of sweetness to it as well. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things, then I think we've covered the malty side as much as we need to. It is again what you'd expect. It doesn't smell too different from what we've had from previous versions of this beer. I mean, you can get you do get a nice little touch of earthiness out of it. Of course, that's one of the traits of Mosaic. Like I say, I'm pretty sure there's Mosaic in this beer. So you get a little touch of earthiness out of it. There's a nice big bit of floral aromaticity in there. It comes across as a little touch spicy, but otherwise quite smooth. You can smell a little bit of that sort of dusty thing from the dry hopping as well. Get a little bit of that kind of green hop dust in there, but there's a nice wee bit of a kind of grassy, zesty character coming out of the beer. You can smell that grassy zestiness on the front of the nose. And for me, I mean, the fruity side of thing, it is really a lot of tangerine. You can maybe smell a little bit of a sharper kind of citrusy note underneath it, and maybe like a teeny wee hint of a kind of pineapple-y note or something like that. But I'm pretty sure this is 100% Mosaic in this beer, and it's it's the lack of complexity in the fruits that kind of tells you that. But because it is mainly tangerine, and there's nothing wrong with that, with having just a couple of fruity flavours and robes in the beer. Sometimes simplicity is better, and Mosaic is one of these hops that really can stand very well on its own. But yeah, fruity side of things, a lot of tangerine for me, a little hint of a slight kind of pineapple-y note that you can often get from Mosaic. But I like how this beer goes about its business. So thumbs up to Stigbergets for the aroma here. Let's get the rest of it out of the can and into the glass, and I think it's about time that we taste this one then. So yeah, this one is the Amazing Haze Non Plus Ultra, 7.5% New England Hazy IPA, basically a double dry hopped extra everything version of the Amazing Haze, as Stigbergets are putting it. But let's have a taste of this and see how we go. So Slanja, Skull, cheers, and as always, thanks for watching. Let's go for it. Yeah, that's pretty damn good. Yeah, one of the things is people always ask me, what's your favourite IPA that you've had from Stigbergets, and it's quite hard. I mean, I've had some really good ones. King of Hops, the ones that have the hop flower on them, the triple IPAs are always very good as well. I've forgotten the Chronic was one that always stuck to mind. I did have another one, Ololeo or something like that it was called, if I remember rightly. That was another very, very good one. But these guys, they put out so many really good IPAs. it really is hard to pick a favourite, and that's one of the reasons why I go back to Stigbergets every month, because you're always going to get a solid New England IPA, and they've produced another one here, so big thumbs up to them. This is worth trying, definitely. It's a little bit more old school, as I say, than some of the other ones that you'll come across, but yeah, I think this is absolutely worth trying. So get yourself a can of this and see how you get on with it. It's got a lovely sort of just slightly oily but still slick juiciness to it. It's a lovely beer, that. So yeah, where do we start with this one then? It's kind of as I would have expected from the aroma, in fairness. But straight away then, across the middle of your palate, you can feel that soft, fluffy, white bready character in there. I really like how that goes across the kind of middle third of your palate. When you go to either side of that middle third of your palate, there's a little bit more of a kind of bread crusty element there. But those, the bread crusty notes in this one are actually quite minimal. It's the soft barley malt white bready notes that you get out of this one. Sitting on top of that, you get a nice kind of smooth, you get a nice little bit of a smooth kind of wheaty layer out of this one. You can feel that in there, just sort of smoothing the whole beer out. And in fairness, it does give you a little bit of bite in the middle third of your palate as well. And of course, the soft bready notes and a bit of the greeniness, they spread into the back third of the palate, and then the wheat gets even more bitiness on the back third of your tongue. And we'll come to that in a minute, of course. But yeah, we'll stick to that middle third of your palate too. But like I say, compared to the more modern New England IPAs, if we can call them that, this one is definitely not quite as thick and creamy, if that makes sense. This is definitely one of these more bitey and kind of slightly crisper New England IPAs, if that makes sense. So yeah, people used to talk back in the day about a West Coast Swedish IPA. So I don't know if there ever was an official sub-style created of that, but yeah, the West Coast Swedish IPAs, they were wheaty and bitey, they had a bit of crispness to the bread, and then you just have a little bit of oatiness in them, and this beer's got all of that. So yeah. But yeah, the breadiness that you get out of this is very nice as well. I think the breadiness sort of almost sweetens up and smoothens out a little bit the further you go into the afters. But like I say, you can feel that smooth, wheaty layer sitting on top, and it's got a wee bit of bitiness in it. Then in the middle of the palate, if you go down that middle line of your tongue, you can feel a nice thick, oaty, creamy element there, and it sort of spreads out towards the the edge of the palate, which is very, very nice. So I do like how that side of things goes together in this beer. You can feel that big, thick, oaty, smooth character in the middle of your palate. Then as you push out towards the edges of your palate, it just sort of gradually fades away, and it sort of sweetens up. Your palate, of course, sweetens up a little bit to the oaty side of things the more that you drink of this beer. But yeah, in the middle third of your palate, of course, you've got a circle. You've got this little circle in there, and that's where you get the kind of really sweet aspects out of the malt base. You can feel a wee bit of that. You can feel a little bit of that sort of Werther's Original. You can feel that Werther's Original butter candy type thing out of this one. And as you move further away from that, there's a little bit of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing coming out of that as well. So again, I do enjoy how this beer goes about its business in that sense, absolutely. Yeah, the malty side of this beer, I think, is really nicely done. It just does feel a little bit more kind of old school to this one, and the further you go into the aftertaste with this, you do get a wee bit of that kind of almost powdery dryness from the oats, which is kind of interesting as well. That helps the beer sweeten up in the middle third of your palate too, but I think that covers the middle third of your tongue, to be quite honest. With you, it's nice. It is just it's like Amazing Haze, but it's just got a bit more kind of oomph to it, if that makes sense. And when they've called it what they have, feel them stating the obvious here. But it's a lovely beer nonetheless. So yeah, back thirds of your palate then. On that border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you can feel a little bit of a bready build up in there, a wee bit of a bread crusty sort of thing. Then the base of that, the base of that front third of your palate, you've got a very nice So you get a little bit more graininess on that back third of your palate, and you can feel there's a bit of a smoother bready note sitting on top of it. And you can also feel the wheat in there as well, and it's got a wee touch of a kind of bitey character to it also. But then sitting on top of that, you have a very nice, sitting on top of that, you do have a very nice kind of, how would you say, you get a really nice sort of kind of more airy, yeasty character out of this one. So you can feel the more airy, bready, yeasty kind of notes sitting on the back. It's sitting on top of that back third of your palate. And as you start from the back of the, you start from the back of the tongue, you can feel the flavour of the beer just condenses down. It condenses down a little bit. And as you go into that middle third of your palate, you can feel it just squashes down, and then you've got all the you've got all those nice flavours that I was talking about there. So yeah, flavour starts off quite tall at the back of the palate, condenses down, then it's a bit more condensed going into that middle third of your tongue, which I very, very much like. So yeah, I do like how that side of things goes together in this beer. So yeah, lovely stuff. But I think that covers the malty and yeasty side of things in this one, to be honest with you. Let's move on to the hoppy side of the beer. So hoppy side of things, the green component does have a little bit of bite on this one, which I think balances out the kind of slightly stronger wheaty presence in this beer. And for those of you watching over in the States, I would compare this one to some of these Trillium ones they get. I've always found that Trillium was a bit more wheaty and bitey. But yeah, Stigbergets, their beers are more along that kind of line, to be honest with you. But yeah, in the back corners of the palate, then you do get a little touch of earthiness out of this one, and as you move further forward along the sides of the palate, it does actually develop quite a little bit of a kind of floral aromatic spice sort of thing. You can feel some of the dustiness from the dry hopping in this one, of course, but there is a little bit more bitterness in this beer as well. And remember, New England IPAs rely a lot more on late addition hopping and dry hopping for what they do, whereas West Coast IPAs also have a good whack of early addition hopping. Early addition hopping, of course, is the one that determines your bitterness, and as you go through the wort boil, you've got a progressive trade-off from bitterness over to flavour and aroma. But yeah, this one, it does feel a little bit more bitter, but again, it could be just due to some of the kind of grass, it could be due to a little bit of the kind of green side of things from the extra dry hopping in this one. But yeah, round the front curve of the palate, this beer is a little bit lighter and grassy. There's a wee bit of zestiness there, of course, but the lingering thing in the green component for me is the dustiness from the dry hopping and that big floral aromatic note, and the dustiness almost gives you the impression of a slight spiciness but remember, Mosaic's a big 14% alpha acid thing, so it's very capable of giving you a good strong green component, make no mistake about that. So yeah, I like how this goes about its business, absolutely. Yeah, so yeah, it's really nice how that green component goes together on this one. But let's focus on that front third of your palate and the fruity side of the beer. So border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again you can feel a little bit of a bready build up in there. There's a wee bit of a bread crusty element to it. Then the base of that front third of your palate is a nice smooth white bready sort of thing, and you do get a fair wee bit of wheaty bitiness in there, which I really, really like. So yeah, on top of that, that's when you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So if you go towards the very back of that front third of your palate, there is a wee bit of a kind of stronger, powerful citrusy zest to this one, which is kind of interesting. It's almost a little bit like passion fruity or lemony or something, which is really unusual. But as you move further forward, what you'll get coming out of this beer quite rapidly is a slightly more oily tangerine. As I say, I'm pretty sure this is only Mosaic hops in this one, but you've got a lovely juicy tangerine note, and it starts from about halfway into the back half of that middle third of your that front third of your tongue, sorry. So you can feel the juicy Mosaic just kind of sitting there, and it sort of becomes a little bit more oily the further forward in that front third of your palate that you go. Then you do get a little bit of a slightly pineapple-y note sitting on top of it, and almost just behind the very front tip of the tongue there's a very slight little bit of lime, and that's when you start to get the grassy esters on the tip of the tongue coming out as well. But yeah, I think it's Mosaic all the way in this one, and you really get a lot of that in this beer. But this is very, very nice. As I say, I do wonder if I maybe should have let this sit a little bit and just mellow out even more, but I was quite excited to try this one because you do still get quite a little bit of the kind of dustiness from the dry hopping in this one. I think you've always got to be careful with New England IPAs because they can have a quite strong green component if you drink them too early, but I think this one, it's probably been canned just a couple of days before it's gone into the Systembolaget warehouse and then gone on sale. But yeah, it's in nice condition now, but maybe another week or so in the can might have mellowed it out even more. But it's a lovely, lovely New England IPA nonetheless. I'm sort of nitpicking when I say that, of course. But yeah, big thumbs up to Stigbergets for this one. Let's round off the review with the mouthfeel then. Yeah, mouthfeel wise, this beer is definitely, it's mid-bodied, it's right in the middle of the spectrum. The carbonation is very, very smooth. The beer has an element of creaminess to it. There's a wee bit of slickness in there as well. But overall, I can appreciate what the deal with this one is. I do like how that goes together. But yeah, hoppy bitterness wise, as I say, I'm a little bit unsure about this one. I think it could be about a 40-ish, maybe even 50 IBU beer, this one, but I do wonder how much of that is due to the kind of dustiness that you get from the dry hopping and things. So yeah, bit of food for thought with this one, I have to say. So yeah, a wee bit of either it's 30 IBUs with just a lot of kind of dusty dry hopping side of things, or it's a little bit more bitter than that. I would guess about 50 IBUs, but always take my IBU counts with a pinch of salt, guys. This is my weakest point of beer reviewing. But like we said, the malt base has a good bit of wheaty bitiness to it. It's got a lovely little touch of oaty smoothiness, and it gets slightly sweeter the further you go into the aftertaste. And you've got some very nice juicy fruity notes in there. Mainly a kind of citrusy zesty quality out of this one. So yeah, I like how this beer goes about its business, that's for sure. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this review. This beer is definitely worth trying, a little bit more old school compared to the other New England IPAs that we've had from Stigbergets in recent times. But when it's a special version of Amazing Haze, you should expect that, to be honest. So nothing really stating the obvious with that statement, a little bit, I guess we could say. But yeah, let's leave it there then. So this one is the what is the exact name? The Non Plus Ultra. Double dry hopped, extra everything IPA version of Amazing Haze, 7.5% from Stigbergets Bryggeri in Gothenburg. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Stigbergets Bryggeri. Check out my social media, check out their social media, and I'll see you soon with more reviews. We've got a very nice Pilsner that we're going to review later in the month from Stigbergets as well, but I thought this one would be nice to kick off with. I was quite excited when I had this. But thank you again for watching. Check out all the links, and I'll see you guys soon. See you on the next review. Slàinte, skål, and cheers.